Hi everyone, this is me Osama Gazelle again, the accent designer. I guess you noticed like the different place and where I am. I'm not actually in Canada now. I'm in Florida. I'm in West Palm Beach, just visiting a few friends and spending a couple days there. It's crazy humid here, but it's always nice to change the scenery a little bit. So I'm gonna be staying here, making all my videos from here for a while, and stay tuned. So today's topic, guys, we're going to be talking about a very well-known topic a lot of people discuss, which is, do designers need to learn coding or master research? And if you were to ask me this question like 2-3 years ago, I would have said it's going to be a huge plus for designers to learn code or to become so efficient at coding. And don't get me wrong, it's still a big plus. If you're a designer, you know how to code and rapidly prototype your projects, that's awesome. But things have rapidly changed over the last couple of years due to cutting edge technologies and projects coming up that needs a lot of research in order to identify accurate use cases. So it is not really just about coding anymore. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, guys. Coding. Should UX designers learn how to code or master research? So before getting, or diving deeper into this topic, I'm just gonna pick up my coffee, go to Best Buy just to pick up my new earbuds and continue talking about it. All right, so the everlasting question: should product designers, learn how to code, or rather invest the time and effort to learn and master research? No matter what I'm gonna say, what kind of answer I have for this question, understanding coding, understanding how the coding environment works, understanding how to communicate with developers and engineers, it's just always a huge plus, right? When you work at a company, being cost efficient, being able to determine beforehand, before you even start designing, whether the solution will be cost efficient or not, is there going to be a lot of technical constraints entailed in the process. Being able to identify all those technical constraints is definitely a huge plus, and it doesn't have to be, or you don't have to be a coding or development expert to identify those constraints, as long as you understand the basics of the engineering atmosphere and environment in general. Now comes to the second part of this question, master research. This is just one of those essential skill set that you must have as a designer. 3, 4, 5 years ago, it wasn't even necessary because, it was just a lot other people like data scientists and researchers take care of the research process, and even marketers take care of the research process. They conduct the in-person interviews, they talk to people, they conduct the guerrilla testing sessions, etc., etc. But these days, as product designers, we have to investigate, explore the market, and actually discover the needs, or accurately define the needs, then discover the solution that hopefully satisfies those needs. Back then, it was a huge plus to have on your resume. Nowadays, especially for those who are actually transitioning into more senior level design roles, it's a must to have. There is no other way around it. You need to understand all the research artifacts that come with the design process. You need to understand how to conduct online surveys, how to conduct in-person interviews. What are the major differences between in-person interviews and online surveys? What you should and shouldn't do after conducting these interviews, if you have to synthesize data points, if you have to use specific methods to investigate dominant patterns and themes in the data points. Those patterns and themes are the things that will be transformed into features and help you construct the personas that represent the solution or not. So understanding, having the intellectual horsepower to actually juggle across the board and identify which toolkit you need to use in which occasion, it's a must to have. So I was saying, having these skill sets and toolkits in your arsenal is very, very beneficial. It kind of helps you build up this rapport and trust with other stakeholders across the company and other team members, whether you're working with product managers, subject matter experts or whatsoever, is never going to work if you just come up with a solution or design and say, oh, that looks pretty nice, or I think that works. Why? You need to articulate the why and how this solution is good or bad, and what kind of data points you have to solidify these findings. That's why research became a fundamental part of any design position these days. Even if you're just working on visual or UI related design roles, understanding UX research will help you tons to just increase the velocity of your work and become more responsive. Basically, just simply put together the answer, which one you should learn as a designer. I guess to answer this question, you need to know your aptitude first. You need to consider or reconsider becoming a designer versus a developer, because at the end of the day, even if you're a very good developer but prefer to work on designs, I don't see that work at any company, especially large scale companies, because they already have dedicated developers and engineers. You might be very good at like understanding like their technical constraints, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. You might be very good at communicating with them, which is a huge plus again, but you're not the one coding, because they hire people to do that, unless you're working on a side project with just a group of friends or like if you have a side hustle, if you want to freelance small project just to practice your hobby, that's a completely different story. But if you want to become an expert at something, you really need to identify what you're good at, what's your aptitude, and what you actually enjoy doing. Is it coding or more of exploring and investigating what's out there, compare what you have and the final product that you may end up having to other competitors, etc., etc. So just a couple artifacts that I will talk more about in depth and explain each one in separate videos. But when it comes to the design process and research, just a couple of steps that I want to quickly mention in a nutshell. So first of all, online surveys and in-person interviews. And online surveys is just a form of quantifying the data points that you can collect in in-person interviews. So you're trying to keep everything concise and precise in multiple choice questions, Likert scale questions, things like that, just to quickly reach out to the potential target audience and collect quick responses. Then in-person interviews is an extended version of, you can call it extended version of the objectives you were trying to cover in the online surveys, but this time in in-person interviews, you're trying to focus more on behavior, understand their why they answered questions the way they did, why they practice certain activities. You're trying to dive deeper into their demographics, understand where they're coming from, their employment status, and how all these things influence their behavior and decision. Then after you conduct those, there is a synthesis stage where you actually take all these insights and answers you collected from the in-person interviews and the online surveys in something we call affinity diagram. It's just a mix and match of all these data points together, trying to get a sense of what they think, and see if there is any commonalities and prominent themes and patterns across all these answers. Once you combine, mix and match these patterns together, you will end up having certain categories, and these categories are a representation of the personas that you will construct later on in the process, and the most dominant needs across all the people you interviewed and surveyed. Then after you do so, you build up your personas. You have a much better and accurate idea of their pain points, their motivations, their goals, their frustrations. Once you build the personas, you will be able to write down a storyboard and journey map. Like person X, they wake up in the morning, they go pick up their coffee, they catch the bus, they go to work, they spend a couple hours, so on and so forth. Basically just drawing some sort of a journey that represent the daily activities of your persona. Once you do that section comes the planning phase, where you try to conduct some competitive and comparative analysis. So you're basically trying to see what's out there in the market, other competitors, how they identify their potential user, if there is any significant commonalities between how they offer their services and how your research informs you about the same potential audience. And one of the most interesting methods that I also plan to talk about more in depth in the future is heuristic analysis. It just consists of 10 principles, 10 very prominent principles that have been put together by Nielsen Normal Company. It's a very common practice that all the UX research related practices use in order to analyze the competitors and see the pros and cons with each product. Then after you do all this, so now you have online surveys, in-person interviews, you synthesize the data in affinity map, you build your personas, journey maps, storyboards, you even analyze the competitors using the 10 principles, heuristic analysis principles. Now you have enough data points, enough knowledge to actually communicate with other stakeholders across the board in your company or the project you're working on. You can present your findings. Then based on dominance of these patterns, you can prioritize the list of features. So you talk to the stakeholders and the other product managers you're working with and say, hey, we found this very, very significant and very common pattern across multiple personas and across multiple demographics. So I guess that's very high in priority and we need to double down on this one. So on and so forth. That's how you present your data point. That's how you keep everything flowing and connected and just authentic, basically. Once you do all that, comes the fun part, wireframing and trying to put together just a bunch of blocks. And wireframing is always one of the most efficient ways to present your findings because it's just more digestible and easy to understand by non-designers, and it makes more sense because you're visualizing everything. Once you do that and you get approval of whatever you're working on, you start working on designs and hopefully polish up everything and hand it off to the developers. And I guess it's pretty obvious that if you have to choose either one, it will definitely be research. If you decided to become an expert, a UX designer or a product designer. Hopefully you found this video helpful, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I plan to dissect and just talk more in depth about each one of these steps in the future, so stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching this video and see you next time.